In this video, I'm going to teach you how to calculate and cut fabric size for your project, convert between different fabric counts, and choose the correct amount of threads and needle size to stitch with. Hi, my name is Marie and this is Caterpillar Cross Stitch channel. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is all about cross stitching and tutorials, so remember to like and subscribe if you've learned something new today. Remember to also follow us on Instagram and Facebook for all the stitching news and inspiration. This video is second in the How to Kit Up Your Own Project series, and it's all about measuring and cutting your fabric. So if you've ever been unsure on how to measure your fabric and what margin to consider, you're in the right place. After watching this video, you'll be able to measure and cut your fabric and convert between counts like a pro. Let's get started. First, let's check the pattern to find out the stitch count so that we can calculate the exact size of fabric that we're going to need. I've got a Bloom and Grow pattern here, and over here, if you can see, it says stitch count 203 by 115. This is a very important number that we are now going to calculate our fabric size with. In order to calculate our fabric size, we need to divide the number of stitches divided by our fabric count. Fabric count determines how many stitches can we stitch in 1 inch of the fabric. So if we have a 14 count fabric, we can fit 14 of these stitches into 1 inch. So if we divide the total amount of stitches, 203, divided by 14, we know that we need 14.5 inches of fabric to fit our design. I hope that makes sense. So our design is 203 by 115, so we know the 203 side, so we've just done 115 divided by 14 again, and that's 8.3 inch. So this is literally our design area. We haven't calculated the margins yet, but we know the exact area size, and we'll look at the margins in just a minute. This principle applies for all the counts. So in 16 count, we're just dividing the number of stitches by 16, and for 18 count, we're dividing the number of stitches by 18. You can see that just by choosing a different count of fabric, we are actually making the design smaller. So this is 14 inches, this is 12.7 inches, and this is 11 inches. So just by changing the count, we are also changing the resulting size of the project, which is sometimes handy. And maybe if you're looking for a specific size of a project for a specific place on your wall, sometimes playing around with different counts can help you find that perfect size of your project. Our 14 count calculation would also be applicable for any 28 count fabric stitched over 2. And the same way 16 count would be applicable for 32 count fabric, and 18 count would be applicable for 36 count fabric. I hope all this makes sense. However, I just wanted to say that in all our Caterpillar cross stitch designs, we also have a calculation that tells you exactly the dimensions without you having to calculate it, although it is really handy sometimes to know the calculation, because sometimes you just want to double check things for yourself, or whenever you're changing up something, it is really handy to know. This brings us to margin calculation. So the way I personally prefer to calculate margin is that I bring the number to the nearest full inch. So in our case, this would be 15 inches by 9 inches, the 14.5 by 8.3. And to find out the exact margin, we need to figure out how much is it that we are going to need to be adding onto this. So a healthy margin on a cross-stitching project is 3 inches each side. So that's 3 inches here, 3 inches here, 3 here, and 3 here. Now, if I know that this right now is 15 inches and this right now is 9 inches, I just have to make it 9 plus 3 plus 3, 15 inches, and 15 plus 3 plus 3, 21 inches. This is just making sure that we don't cut the fabric simply to the exact size of the area that we are going to be stitching on, but we also leave our margin for finishing the object, for having the object in a hoop, and just for very comfortable stitching. So for this project on 14 count, I would be cutting a fabric sized 15 inches by 21 inches. I, however, have decided that I will be stitching this particular project on 32 count even weave. So I will be looking at a cutting fabric area of 19 inches by 14 inches. So this is my 32 count even weave fabric. I'm going to show you my secret fabric cutting weapon right now. Not so secret, but this is a quilting ruler that is absolutely fantastic because it helps me make sure that I'm cutting the fabric evenly while knowing that I can see my right angles here and everything. It is extremely handy. I can 100% recommend. So this is my 12 inches. I'm going to just note with a finger here, this is 12, and I just need 2 more. 2 more is here, which would mean that I would be cutting here. In this case, I'm obviously, not going to be doing anything with such a tiny piece of fabric, so I'm just going to leave it as it is, being happy that instead of 14 inches, I've got 15, so I've got even a little bit more margin that I originally needed. And now let's turn the fabric around and calculate the 19 inches side. Okay, so to measure 19 inches, I'm going to again sort of mark, this time with a pen, because I'm going to need to move the fabric a little bit more. This is just a friction pen, a heat erasable. So this is 12, so I need 7 more, right? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's 12. So this was a 12 mark, so this was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I always triple check at least when cutting fabric, because I don't need to tell you that cutting fabric is irreversible. So make sure that you are 100% happy with your calculations, with your measurements, so that you don't ruin a piece of fabric or maybe have to buy a new piece of fabric because you haven't cut your piece of fabric correctly. So my best advice, triple check. Now, I don't mind this little bit extra. This is maybe ½ an inch extra on this side, so I'm going to keep that. And I now have got a couple of options on how to start cutting the fabric. I can use my friction pen and make sort of line, and then use my fabric scissors to cut it all off. I can also just maybe make a little point here and then wing it a little bit with my scissors. Some people can do really straight lines. I'm not one of them people. Or we can use this rotary cutter. It's pretty easy to get on Amazon. It has got this safety brake so that when the safety brake is out, I can't do anything to myself, I can't hurt myself. But when I pop it in, this pops out and it's really sharp, as it should be, because it needs to cut the fabric. I'm cutting on a self-healing crafting mat, so I'm not worried about the table beneath. And we must remember that this is only 12.5 inches, but we need 14 inches over here on this side. So I will keep on cutting to meet up with the edge of the previous cut, which is right here. So the quilting ruler is going to help me to get it right to get it even. So I'm just going to make sure that it aligns with this side that I've just cut, and that it also aligns with this side that has been cut previously. And I'm just going to make a nice cut into the fabric right now. It doesn't have to be entirely exact to the millimeter. You can see I've got a little bit extra margin in here. That's absolutely fine. As long as it's not less, it's always good news. Now that we've cut our fabric, it's time to decide how many strands of DMC, or whichever thread you choose to use, how many strands are we going to use on our fabric. The general recommendation is for 14 count Aida, use 2 strands of floss. On 16 count or 32 count equivalent, 2 strands of floss. And on 36 count or 18 count, we can go either 1 or 2 strands of floss depending on the preferred coverage. Now, when I say the general recommendation, I mean everybody ends up preferring something else and everybody develops their own style. So on 14 count, you may see not only 2 strands, but also 3 strands, just because some people prefer better coverage or more coverage. Although the risk of using 3 strands on 14 count is that it might become a little bit bulky and it might become a little bit difficult at some point to put the stitches in because of the bulk of the thread there, especially if it's full coverage. And finally, after we've chosen our number of threads and our fabric, it's time to choose the correct needle size, because it really does matter and it can change your stitching experience toward the better or the worse. So let's get into it. These are generally the 3 sizes of needles that are recommended for cross stitch, and the type of the needle is called a tapestry needle. There are different needles available on the market. We will not get into it in detail in this particular video. We are just going to do a rough overview right now. So this is a tapestry needle, and this needle size, hopefully you can see that they are slightly different in size. This needle is the 24 size, which is needle size recommended for our 14 count fabric. Over here we've got a size 26. That size is perfect for 16 count or 32 count fabric. Just perfect to glide through the fabric, but not to be too loose. And finally our 28 size, and that is perfect for our 36 count, 40 count, and perhaps also 46 count. As all the time with cross stitch, all these tutorials are just best practice sharing or showing you a different way, broadening your horizon. But in the end of the day, the most important thing is that you stitch the way you love stitching. So combined with last week's video, this is pretty much all the basics that you need to know about cross stitching fabric. I hope it helped you. Maybe try a different fabric or experiment with a count or try a different needle size. If it did, please let us know in the comment below. We would love to know. In next week's video, we are going to be focusing on threads. Different ways of storing it, keeping track of your stash, best practice, simply everything you need to know to kit up efficiently. You can try your kitting up skills on our PDF patterns available on www.caterpillarcrossstitch.com or on our 8 free PDF patterns. You can get those by signing up to our newsletter, aka VIP Stitch Club. The link is in the description below. I personally like to switch up between kitting myself and the comfort of receiving a complete kit. If that sounds like you too, we've got you covered. Just head over to our website and choose from a wide range of full kits available in a wide variety of fabric counts and types. And remember, you can join almost 15,000 other stitchers who help each other and share their progress in our Facebook group Caterpillar Cross Stitch Cells. And that is it from us at Caterpillar Cross Stitch this week. Thank you so much for watching and see you next Monday.